Aid, Adult Mental Health First Aid. I'm a board member with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And I got involved and I've written a couple of books on youth mental health. So it's a passion topic for me. Part of the reason for that is I struggled with depression at various points in my life. The worst of it for me was in high school when I struggled with suicide ideation. I was lucky I was able to figure out the brain hacks, the self-care that worked for me. There were some adults who were helpful, some friends who were helpful, some who not so helpful. But what we're going to talk about today is how much control we have over our mental health. And part of, you'll see images through of hikes that I've done because I equate it to hiking. Hiking is my go-to self-care. It's the stuff I love doing the most. And I did some of these with my daughter, so we'll talk a little bit about that. How many of you know how to change your brain chemistry during the day?
By simply smiling?
Yeah, I mean, our behaviors.
Medication if you need it.
Medication can certainly do that. But there are a lot of things that we can do. And we're going to talk about how we do that. So first I want to just acknowledge the world you're growing up in is different than the one I grew up in. The average middle school and high school students sleep almost an hour less per night than your peers did just 10 years ago. Why? Too many people have these things on or are using them too late or have your computers going. You spend about half of the time in person with your friends as people did just 10 years ago. And that can be really difficult because one of the brain chemistries that helps us feel good is called oxytocin. We get that when we interact with our friends. So if I'm sending a text message to somebody in this room and they open it up, neither one of us gets any brain chemistry benefit from it. If I just look at them and say the same words, we both get a little bit of brain chemistry benefit as we do that. So remember when everything first shut down during the pandemic? A lot of people initially that less stress. Okay, I don't have to do stuff. So for the first month or two, it wasn't necessarily so terrible. But over time, it got worse for people because you lost that source of feeling good from interacting with other people. Declining sunlight. So one of the things that I've learned is that I'm vitamin D deficient, and about 30% of Americans don't get enough vitamin D. One of the brain chemistries that helps us feel good is serotonin. To have it, we have to have enough vitamin D in our body. And it's particularly for a lot of people in the winter, they don't get enough vitamin D. In the summer even, 2/3 of teenagers now spend less time outdoors than maximum security inmates. We were meant to spend more time outdoors, getting enough sunlight. Now, not enough to get burned, but enough, that is a nutrient our body needs. We also, this may or may not be the case in your family, but parents, as they talked about in the keynote, are often overly involved, not letting you figure out how to solve problems and organizing too much of what you're doing. So there's less of that resilience built up. And then there are a lot of risk factors that have gotten worse. The nutrition people eat doesn't if it comes in a bag, in a wrapper, or inside a box, the chances that the food has the ingredients in the way your body needs it to produce the brain chemistry that helps you feel good is pretty low. So a lot of people eat ultra-processed food. If you start to feel bad, and some people can handle it, like my wife will have no problem eating Lucky Charms or Fruit Loops with Lucky Charms marshmallows as her dinner. Her body can handle certain things that mine certainly can't. So just think about what you eat as making a difference. And then there are other things. drugs that are hidden in a lot of things that people take. This shows you how steep the decline has been and how frequently teens and adolescents spend time with their friends. It's something that, and it continued from there. I'm going to speed past a couple slides because the way this was set up, I couldn't hide some of them. So I'm going to talk about impulse control, how we create the right brain chemistry to help us feel good when we're otherwise struggling, and then thought patterns, the impact of thought patterns in terms of our mental health. You know, everything I'm going to talk about, in addition to helping our mental health, helps us academically, helps in sports, it helps in creative performance. So all of these things have multiple benefits. There are some other things that can affect mental health that I'm not going to spend time in that they can work on top of it. This is all stuff that you can manage. So how many of you think stress can be a good thing? Raise your hand if you think stress can be good. Yeah, stress can be good. Because when we first get stressed, we'll get a boost of adrenaline that feeds into our brain, that gives us energy, it allows us to focus, we can perform at a higher level. The problem with stress is when it lasts too long or it's too intense. Because when we get stressed, we also, our brain is getting fed a chemical called cortisol. That cortisol starts to coat the amygdala. It's the fight, flight, freeze part of the brain. And when that cortisol layer gets too thick, it creates a barrier that prevents impulses from getting from our eyes and ears through our amygdala to our prefrontal cortex where we solve problems, or to the parts of our limbic system where we control emotions or even access our memories. How many of you have ever, when you're taking a test, knew you knew the answer, but you couldn't think of it while you're taking the test? Does that happen to anybody? Yeah, so if we're stressed, it can literally block our access to our memories. So it's important to know when we get stressed, how do we manage it? In a classroom, and we know there's a bunch of things that work. Yoga, meditation, mindfulness. Research has shown prayer focused on other people, walks in nature. But if you're in a classroom, you're not going to break out into a yoga pose, are you? Probably not. So, but you can do deep breathing, and nobody needs to know it. Deep breathing is a way of slowing down your heart rate, slowing down your breathing rate. That tells the brain, I'm not under attack, there's no predators, I'm not starving. Lets that cortisol clear out and allows you to think more clearly. So I'm going to do a deep breathing exercise, and I invite you to join me in doing it. I'll breathe in through my nose to the count of 4, hold it to the count of 4, breathe out through my mouth to the count of 4, and then hold that out. And then if you're doing this for yourself, you might repeat that a couple of times. But breathe in, hold, out. So for those of you who did that, it helps you calm. That frees up that cortisol. That lets you think. That's a way of controlling your brain chemistry. So, like I said, stress is good to a point. Not having any stress is also bad because you don't feel like anything you're doing matters. You want some stress is good because it helps motivate, it helps give you energy. And when we're in stressful situations, that's when we learn the most. You know, I remember the things that were hard that I was able to accomplish. I remember how I did it. Things that I do routinely, I can't even remember that I did them. So that stress helps us build our resilience, build our capability. Too much stress, though, starts to trigger anxiety. than anger. And at some point, we even break down. So we have to be able to find things that allow us to de-stress. So figure out what is it that we want to do that helps us to relax. Listening to music. Music's good in the way it helps the brain connect to things in different ways, and it can take you to a different world than what's going on around you. Playing video games. You know, it's funny because, you know, for a lot of years people thought playing video games had all negative consequences. We actually know that they can be really good. Playing some strategic video games, especially with high-speed action, they found that surgeons who do that are 29% better at performing surgery than the surgeons who don't do that. Plus, you get that challenge of making progress towards your goals. Making art. So there's a reason art therapy gets used regularly in mental health treatment. The act of creating gives us a sense that we can express ourselves. And feeling like you can't express yourself is discouraging. And when you're creating art, you can kind of forget about what else is going on because you're focused on that art. Any form of exercise releases endorphins. That's another way of hacking your brain chemistry. We know that exercise, movement, is one of the most powerful things to do for our mental health. And it doesn't have to be in a gym. Dancing counts, even mowing the lawn, going for a walk in the woods. But wrestling, because you've built up so much endorphins in your body, after you're done, those endorphins are still flowing. It helps you relax, helps you feel good. So that's a great point. So if you're ever feeling overwhelmed, even just going for a walk for 10 minutes and getting outside can make a difference. Now in the middle of winter when it's really nasty, you know, sometimes it's so bad outside that I'll just go in my basement and walk, or we've got some weights down there, lift some weights. Just enough to get some of that energy burnt off, get those endorphins flowing. So when stress gets too much, it actually sticks us in that fight, flight, freeze mode. It can actually overwhelm our brain chemistry. So it makes it hard to make good decisions, to solve problems. We have to have those things that we do to help us relax, to kind of break away from that and break up that stress. When we have that moderate stress, as I mentioned, it improves our performance, makes us more alert. Stress boosts our memory. We recall things better when we do them with some stress around us. So this is my daughter Shannon. She's now a mental health therapist. So this was on our hike, a hike in Colorado. It was her first time doing a long hike up a 14,000 foot mountain with me. And we got to this point in the hike and she just said, I'm done. I can't handle this. I'm exhausted. So I said, fine, let's just take a seat. We're going to rest here for a while. And after a while, we sat there for a bit. I said, okay, let's think about a few things. It's 35 degrees and there are 40-mile-an-hour winds. Maybe you pull the pants out of your bag so your legs are warmer. Maybe put a hat on, warm up. Let's drink some water, let's eat, let's just sit here. And after we were sitting there for a while, I said, okay, so we don't have to get to the top. So that was a relief. She needed to know that I was okay with not making it to the peak. But, up around here, there's a pile of rocks. They call them cairns. I said, do you think you can make it to that one? Yeah, I can make it to that one. And we can rest there if you're tired. We get to that one. Look at the next pile of rocks. Can you make it to that one? Yeah, I can make it to that. So we did it in slow increments. We let her rest. She ate. We made it to the top. But at this point in the hike, if I had told her we're going to go to the top, it was overwhelming. So a big part of managing what we have to deal with is breaking it down into pieces. So when you have a big project that's due, If all you think of is everything that has to be done by the time the project's due, sometimes that can be overwhelming, and for some people, that can keep them from even wanting to get started. So just break it down into what do I need to do today? And then what do I need to do tomorrow? And make a plan for yourself. But you don't have to know all the steps. Don't get overwhelmed by how much it would need to be. So a big thing for Shannon as we got there was, this is already a great day. I mean, look at how beautiful the view is from here. And we had started, I think somewhere down here is the parking lot, actually down below that. You know, so you've already accomplished a lot. Acknowledge that some days, and I've been on hikes when my body just gave out. There was no way I could finish it. I had to be okay with the fact that I wasn't prepared that day to make it. I had either not gotten enough sleep, I didn't bring enough food, I hadn't trained enough. So you have to be okay with it. Okay, I got as far as I can go. This was still amazing. I don't have to finish. So I mentioned all those impulse controls, the de-stressing, the deep breathing, yoga, meditation, mindfulness. Prayer, for those of you who are part of the faith, if it focuses on other people, is de-stressing. When you focus it on what you want and what your needs are, it doesn't have that same effect. It's getting outside of ourselves that makes the difference. Nature improves mental health. So the only point here, there's something about seeing nature, the asymmetry of the clouds, the grass, the leaves, water, that lets us think better. Even viewing pictures of nature for 30 seconds, a lot of research has shown we make better decisions. We solve problems more readily. So for most people, exposure to nature is a really good thing. So if we're in this classroom, you really can't see any nature here. I mean, I can see the building across the way and a tiny bit of the clouds out the back. These are not the ideal learning environments. Just having plants inside the room or a little waterfall or something that gives you that natural peace. So when I talked about brain chemistry, does anybody here have too much to do sometimes and decide I need to make a list of everything I need to do? Anybody here make lists? Does it feel good to check stuff off? Yeah, you're hacking your dopamine system. So every time you make progress towards your goals, you get a little boost of dopamine that gives you energy to pursue the next project. So there are unhealthy ways to get dopamine released. Some drugs and alcohol do that. But if you make progress towards your goals, it releases that. Volunteering helps us to feel good. A lot of research shows brain chemistry-wise, the people who do the volunteering get more benefit from it than even the people that you help. So it might sound counterintuitive if you're feeling bad to be putting time into helping other people feel good, but the reality is that also makes you feel good. So think of volunteering as an important thing. How many of you have pets? Anybody? Does it feel good? How many of those are dogs? So when you get home, does the dog greet you with a lot of energy and enthusiasm? Does that feel good? Or when you're sitting there watching something and they come snuggle up on you? Yeah, that's the same oxytocin that we get from interacting with people and from hugging or just eye-to-eye, face-to-face contact with friends. We get that from our pets. I talked about the vitamin D, the endorphins. So besides exercise, the other way we get endorphins, laughter. So aren't we attracted to people that we laugh with? It feels good to laugh. So finding that laughter in the day, and some days you're not gonna find it, because some days are just awful. I mean, that's part of life. But the days you can find laughter, it's one of the reasons I watch a lot and listen to a lot of comedians. Just the ability to laughter in the day can make things seem easier. There is a cheat code way to get endorphins, eating really spicy food. It's just not really good as a long-term mental health strategy. But spicy food also releases those endorphins. What the endorphins do in your body is it's a way of coating the pain that you felt. So when you're wrestling, does it hurt sometimes when you're wrestling?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so that endorphin release is to help coat that. So are there any runners here? When you first start running, does it seem harder than once you get going? That's because when you first start, the endorphins aren't flowing in your body yet. After they start flowing. So sometimes people will talk like in basketball or soccer about catching your second wind. That second wind is when you've opened your lungs up and those endorphins are flowing in the body. Pieces with the stress response and the things that you can manage in terms of brain chemistry. And of course, for some people, we just don't always have all the ingredients produced in our body to produce the brain chemistries we need. So sometimes medication can make a difference. But that's, there's a lot we can do and test, and then we figure out if we need that as well. But our thought patterns also matter. So one of my really bad habits in high school was a lot of negative self-talk. So 100 times a day I'd say, Mike, you're a loser, you're ugly, nobody likes you, nobody wants to be your friend. Just really mean stuff that I never would have said to anybody else. And nobody was actually even saying it to me, or at least very few people were saying it to me. But I had a really negative self-perception. What I didn't know at the time is the way the brain works. Whatever neurons and synapses you use in the brain, they get stronger. They're like a muscle. Whatever you use gets stronger. And then the strongest part of the brain is where everything goes to first. So somebody could have been paying me a compliment and I wouldn't believe it. I would treat it as they were making fun of me or they were being sarcastic because I wasn't able to see things clearly. A lot of what therapy does is to actually help people to think about things in different ways so that more parts of their brain are strengthened so they can solve problems, they can think about things in a different way, they can reframe experiences. It gets really easy to become fixated on a thought and to get stuck in a loop thinking about something and defining ourselves in a particular way. It's not, it's a common thing for people who are on the autism spectrum, but it's also very common for people who are high achieving to have a rigid pattern of thinking and to think things have to go this one way, and if they don't go this one way, then it means something's wrong with them. Social media can make things worse in our thought pattern. Is there anybody here who always feels better every time you look at social media? Is there anybody here who sometimes feels worse when you're on TikTok or Instagram or Snapchat? Or anybody sometimes feel worse? A lot of people do. What we've learned, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok all did internal research, and they found that young adults, teens, preteens, often feel worse about themselves the more the time they spent using it. It actually even increased thoughts of suicide. Now, did they change how their algorithms work once they learned that? No. Because part of what was getting people to feel bad was also making them addicted to using the platform. That it was trapping them in a doom essentially a doom. So if you're ever using social media and you feel worse, then it's using you. And you need to think about redefining your relationship with social media. How many of you, what are some good things that you can do with social media? What are some of the reasons that it can be? Do you sometimes just look at a bunch of TikTok videos and laugh at them? Can you learn new things? Maybe stay in contact with people that you don't see regularly, a friend that moved away. So there are good things that you can do with social media, but they're not necessarily all good things. There are some negatives that go with it. So if you're struggling, if you feel yourself hitting a point where your mental health is being affected, just put it aside. A woman that I teach mental health first aid with just decided she was feeling so much worse at using it that for Lent she's not going to use social media the whole time. And she's on day 4 and she said, I actually feel a lot better. So it's not just young adults, it's everybody who uses it who's prone to those struggles. So if you're engaged in negative self-talk, breaking out of that's really important. One of the things that we know can work to help people feel better, besides volunteering, is engaging in a practice called gratitude. Taking time each day, or at least every week, to think about what are the good things that I have going. And, I went through a time in high school that was so bad I had trouble thinking of this. And one day, the only thing I could come up with was I had a good apple at lunch. But it was just that practice of thinking about what those good things were that over time helped me to think about the world in a different way than I was when everything I was thinking was that negative perspective. Change take times. Some of the things that we know help develop our neuroplasticity, which means we can think more broadly, we can solve more problems, we can take on new things. Learning a foreign language, creating music or art, traveling, reading complex literature, and as I said down here, even some video games. There are a lot of different ways that we can help our brain expand the way it's able to think and then to grow. So when you think about life, if you look at everything as an obstacle, it can be really hard. So this was for near the top of the hike. And at this point, I think we've been hiking maybe 3.5 hours, 4 hours. And then we get to the section where it's basically a boulder climb. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a person there, there's one up there. It's not really safe hiking. You've got to, get your feet set and make sure that you don't fall in a crack because you could easily break something here. That can be daunting. So you have to figure out, A, can I do this? Do I have the energy to do it? But we thought of it as this is a puzzle to solve. So we went up a path somewhere along here and then realized, wow, there's no way to get to the next part without running and jumping, and if we miss, we're going to be injured, and then that's not good. So you come back down, and we tried another path, and then we came over to the side, we tried another path. We eventually figured out there's a way to get up there safely. So don't think that everything just goes forward, that you can just start on a path and you're always going to get where you want to go. Know that there are going to be obstacles, but think of them as challenges. It makes it easier to struggle. So micro hacks in terms of things that research has proven help us feel better if we build this into our thought patterns. Shifting our perspective. So when bad things happen, think about what did I learn from it? What can I do with this to help somebody else? Finding awe. Being around nature, beautiful music, beautiful art, great performances. All those things where we can be awed by things helps us to feel better. Celebrating another's joy. So sharing your good times, but also seeing other people's good experiences. If you feel good when you see other people's good experiences, that's actually a healthy thing. If you feel jealous every time you look at it, that can weigh on you over time. Tune into what matters. So, what are your values? Who do you want to be? Is the way you're acting consistent with the person that you're comfortable being and that you want to be? If you think about, we go through hard experiences, sometimes they don't turn out the way we want, but if we behaved in a way that's consistent with who we are, then we're okay with that. I can think of a time my dad lost his job because he was asked by his company to do something that was unethical. He refused to do it and they let him go. Did it feel good to lose his job? No. Did he feel like he made the right decision because it was consistent with his values? Absolutely. I talked about gratitude. Recognize that you're irreplaceable and a force for good. Nobody else can be you. So many people who are young adults think that we have to fit in and we have to be like other people. It's actually what make the parts of you that are unique that make you so irreplaceable. The way you think, the way you interact with people, the way you see the world, what you're learning. And don't think you have to have all the answers today. It can be a little daunting to watch The Voice and see somebody who's 14 years old and they've already got this amazing talent. Well, that's great for them. But we don't all have that. In fact, very few of us figure out when we're young what we're doing. And even most adults have changed direction in their lives multiple times. Because we also evolve as we go through. Do something kind. Just saying something nice to somebody can make a powerful difference in their day. Sharing a laugh, of course, is always good. Anytime we can laugh, it can be a really good thing. So finding people that we can comfortably be ourselves. Now, not laughing and making fun of other people where we're hurting them, but laughing where we're enjoying what's going on. How many of you sleep at least 8.5 or 9 hours every night? So that's actually pretty good. If you find that you're sleep deprived, it's really hard to feel good. So every thought you have, everything you see, everything you hear is firing synapses in the brain. That creates waste material. That waste material then sits in your brain until you get a full, good night's sleep. So you might have a day where you didn't sleep very well and you can kind of power through it. But if you've gone a couple of days where you haven't slept well, it's going to make it harder to think clearly. You're going to perform worse academically, you're going to perform worse in sports. People who haven't slept well for multiple days can be as dangerous driving on the road as a drunk driver. So sleep is really essential. Building good sleep practices can be really helpful. If you're somebody who struggles to sleep well, maybe you have so much on your plate you just can't do it, or if you're staying up till midnight when the teacher posts grades, that can throw off your sleep. Finding good sleep practice is really helpful. I don't usually recommend people, but there's a sleep expert, Matthew Walker, who I'm a big fan of this stuff he talks about. He's also the sleep coach for the U.S. Olympic teams. So I figure he's got to be pretty good. They've tested him out pretty well. But a big thing, finding your routine. taking a really warm bath or shower at night can be actually good for sleep because it warms your body up. And then after it warms you up, when you get out, you cool off. Your body cooling off is actually a sign to the brain that it's time to go to sleep. Getting early morning, getting enough serotonin in our body, daylight early in the morning, allows that serotonin to degrade into melatonin. That helps us sleep at night. Disconnecting your devices, and for anybody who's taking medication, if it's causing sleep disruption, talk to your doctor about that. I do training for pediatricians, and one thing that they all know is no medication has ever been tested on anybody under 18, so they're guessing at what's likely to help. They don't necessarily know, so if you're taking something, you've got to talk to them. Okay, let me see what else. We've got just a few minutes to cover. Journaling is a really good mental health practice because when we have ideas swirling around in our head, we're not really evaluating them until somebody asks us what's going on and we talk about them or we write it down. So people who create poetry or journal or do things like that, that's a way of bringing clarity to what are you thinking. I think we talked about music, language, light. This is on here. And then having our hobbies, things we do for pleasure, anything where you're creating, cooking, baking, quilting, gardening, anything, crafting, anything you're doing where you're creating, where you can see something that comes out of that, can be a really powerful thing, right? So we all have days that just don't go right. So this was in the Great Sand Dunes in Colorado. My daughter thought this would be fun to run down here. And it didn't quite work out the way she was intending. Don't we all have days like that where it starts out okay and then it just falls apart? So what do? We get back up. We take a step at a time. We prepare for our challenge and we make sure that we absorb the good stuff on our way. Lastly, if you're on a hike, like this is at Yosemite National Park called Half Dome, 45 degrees slick granite. You slip on this, you're going to slide down and you're going to die. But they've got metal chains, wood stanchions. When I got to this part of the hike, I didn't know if I could do this, so I just sat there and watched to see, is there anybody in my kind of shape, my age, who's doing this? And I saw some people could do it. That gave me the confidence to do it. But the key is, you got to use our supports. We don't have to do this on our own. There are places out there and people out there who will support us. And of course, anybody who's struggling, the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, you don't have to be in crisis. You can just be having a bad day and not know what to do. You can always call or text 718.